What is up, guys? In this 40k video, I'll be giving my thoughts on Terminators from both Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines, and comparing them to the Iron Hero Hearthguard of the Leagues of Votann. But without further ado, let's get into the video, and I hope you guys enjoy. Now, as a disclaimer, I am by no means an authority on Chaos Space Marines, or the Leagues of Votann. I'm not someone who's been playing 40k for years or decades and I've seen it and done it all. I'm not that guy, right? If you want more comprehensive breakdowns of specific units within different armies or within these different armies, I'd suggest either checking like one of the Reddit subcommunities for the armies, or finding a content creator out there who is dedicated to Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, the Leagues of Votann, or if you're playing a very specific chapter within Space Marines, look for them. And then on top of that, I will only be referring to now when I'm talking about the Terminators and Hearthguard, I'm specifically talking about Terminators from Space Marines proper, so no Codex Divergent Space Marines, and Chaos Space Marines from Chaos Space Marines. So I'm not referring to any Terminators from the Death Guard, Grey Knights, World Eaters, etc. So I want to get these disclaimers out of the way first and foremost. Now, starting off, we're going to talk about the Iron Hero Hearthguard, give a little breakdown as to their data sheet, their stats, all that. So, Iron Hero Hearthguard costs 135 points for one unit of 5 models, or they cost 270 for a unit of 10 models. They can be led by a Call or an Iron Hero Champion, both of which cost 70 points, and they can be the unit, regardless if it's a unit of, or if it's a unit of 5, can be transported in a Hecaton Land Fortress. If it is a unit of 10, you cannot transport it in a Land Fortress, but you could then still deep strike them in with their Weave Field Crest. And as shown below, you can see their stats: 5 inches of movement, toughness 5, 2-up save, 2 wounds with a 7-up leadership, and 1 OC. You can see the ranged weapon options being the Edekarn Plasma Gun, Exo Armor Grenade Launcher, which all of them have equipped, and the Vulcanite Disintegrator. Now, I'm also going to point out that with regards to war gear options and the loadout of the unit, the entire unit can have Edekarn Plasma Guns, Exo Armor Grenade Launchers, and Concussion Gauntlets. But you can swap out the Concussion Gauntlets for Plasma Blade Gauntlets, and then you can swap out the Plasma Gun, the Edekarn Plasma Gun, for Vulcanite Disintegrators. And then the Thane, or the Heisier, or the Sergeant equivalent of the Hearthguard, can take a Graviton Hammer instead of a Concussion Gauntlet or a Plasma Blade. And of course, their ability allows them to reroll ranged hit rolls of 1, so long as they're targeting the closest eligible target. That's overall really solid. And then with their other war gear options, you can give them the Deep Strike ability with Teleport Crest, or you can give them a 5-up invulnerable save with the Weave Field Crest. Now, the war gear options sort of aren't as relevant, since you can attach a Call or an Iron Hero Champion to them, give them whatever crest that they don't have. So, like, let's just say the Teleport Crest, and the unit is still eligible to Deep Strike even with the Weave. If the Sergeant equivalent in the Hearthguard has the 5-up invuln save crest. So overall, pretty solid compared to Terminators. About as tanky, about as sturdy, 1 less wound and a worse invuln save, but far more threatening shooting and about on par melee. Moving into Terminators for the Space Marines proper, they cost 170 points for 1 unit of 5, or 340 points for a unit of 10. They can be led by a Captain, Ancient, Chaplain, and Librarian, all of which in Terminator armor, with their points costs respectively being shown next to the characters. And they can be transported in a Repulsor and its variants, or a Land Raider and its variants. And of course, you can deep strike it in, and you can see the war gear options and its stats as below. Terminators are tough, 5 inches of movement, toughness 5, 2-up save of a 4-up invuln, 3 wounds, 6-up leadership, and 1 OC. And then, of course, you can see that they have access to special or heavy weapon options, being the Assault Cannon, Cyclone Missile Launcher, or Heavy Flamer. Although to bear in mind, only up to one or two models in the unit can have a heavy weapon option. So if you're running a unit of 5, only one of them can have a heavy weapon. If you're running a unit of 10, only two of them can have it. So the standard issue range weapons that the entire unit's probably going to have are Storm Bolters, and then for melee weapons, the entire unit can have Chain Fists, Power Fists, or Power Weapons. Personally, I always lean towards Power Fists when I've tried them out. When I've tried Terminators out, just because it seems like the more standard and general option. And then, of course, with their abilities, they have the ability to deep strike. They have Teleport Homer, which allows them to rapid ingress for free, so long as they resolve that rapid ingress next to the or the Teleport Homer token. And then each time that they target the Oath of Moment target, they can add a 1 to the hit roll. So if they are near whatever the Oath target is, they're adding a +1 to hit on top of the hit reroll from Oath of Moment and the +1 to wound. So overall, not terrible, but requires a bit of setup, and you need to make sure that the Oath target is next to them or they're near it. And if not, then their ability effectively doesn't do much. The Fury of the First. And then lastly, for going over the data sheets, would be the Chaos Terminators. Now they cost 180 points for a unit of 5, or 360 points for a unit of 10. They can be led by a Chaos Lord, Sorcerer, and Abaddon the Despoiler. Both the Chaos Lord and the Sorcerer are in Terminator armor, respectively. With their and points cost for the units are next to the names. And they can also, similar to the Terminators of the Space Marines, can be transported by a Chaos Land Raider, but only in a unit of 5, not a unit of 10. Unless you want to be weird and pay the points cost for a 10-man unit, but run them in a 6-man, unit. And like with the Terminators from the previous slide, same stats, 5 inches of movement, toughness 5, 2 up save of a 4 up invuln, 3 wounds, 6 up leadership, and 1 OC. And for warrior options, they can either use all combi bolters or all combi weapons, as far as I'm recollection. And then, of course, in a unit of 5, one of them can have a heavy weapon, so your options are a heavy flamer or the Reaper autocannon. And then if it's a unit of 10, 2 of the models can have 2 heavy weapons. Now, unlike Terminators, Chaos Terminators cannot all come equipped with Power Fists. Their default melee weapon is actually all accursed weapons, so power weapons. Only up to 3 of them, 3 of the Terminators can, in a unit of 5, can have Power Fists. 1 of them can have a Chain Fist, and then 1 of them, the last member, can have a paired accursed weapon or stick with the accursed weapon that they had. So overall, in terms of melee, the Chaos Space Marine or the Chaos Terminators are a bit on the lacking side, funnily enough, but is what it is. If you can get away with using them with cursed weapons, then they will do okay. They'll just be found a little lacking compared to their loyalist cousins. And then, of course, for abilities, they can deep strike. They have access to Dark Pact from the Chaos Space Marines, so you can give them on-demand lethals or sustained, or if they're within the range of a Hellbrute, you can give them both. And then their ability, anytime that they make a Dark Pact until the end of the phase, they can reroll the hit roll against, against the target. It's overall really solid. Granted, if you're running Veterans of the Long War detachment, this ability may not be all that relevant, but that is if they are attacking the unit that is your focus of hatred from Veterans of the Long War, since that acts like Oath of Moment, but not entirely. Now we've gone through the data sheets, we're going to get into thoughts and experience. Now, first bullet point, Terminators and Chaos Terminators, as everyone will know, and as I've said in a previous video that I did about a month or two ago, is that Terminators and Chaos Terminators, not just these two in these factions, but just Terminators in general, are a little too expensive for what they do. On top of the fact being that to get the most out of these units, there is kind of the character tax, right? With Space Marines proper, their shooting is kind of bad. And their melee is overall pretty solid. 3 attack power fists, hitting on threes. It's overall pretty solid. I wouldn't say that that's bad by any means, but you have to get them into melee. 9-inch charges are unreliable. The only way to make that more reliable is to have a captain leading them. Even then, that's still not the most reliable charge in the world, and you're paying an additional 95 points for a captain, another Terminator unit, in a unit that already costs 170 to 340 points. That's a lot of points. And like the two sub bullet points are kind of repeats of the same thing, but it's to accentuate the point of Terminators really need a captain in Terminator armor to make them better, and that's to make their charge more reliable. Yes, you can also use them for the reduced stratagem cost, which is also useful, but if you're running a unit of 5 with the captain and Termi armor, that ability may not be as effective or as useful. And of course, when looking at Chaos Space Marines, really the only character that's like really stand out for Chaos Terminators is a Chaos Sorcerer in Terminator armor, and that is for the same reasons as why you'd use a captain in Terminator armor. It's to allow the unit to reroll charge rolls that they make after deep striking. And there's of course Death Hex, which I don't think is a terrible ability, but I do think it's situational and can be situationally useful, or in some cases maybe not needed. But moving down to the second bullet point, Hearthguard, the Einherjar Hearthguard of the Votann, I do think are, when you compare them directly to Terminators, since that is effectively the closest comparison you can make, are more effective at what you would want to use Terminators for to begin with. Even if, let's say, you take them in a unit of 5, 5 Hearthguard are cheaper than 5 Terminators. Yes, they're not as tanky, right? They don't have an invuln natively, and they have 1 less wound. So you have the issue of, okay, well, in order to kill Hearthguard efficiently, you want to hit them with damage 2 attacks, and compared to Terminators where you want to hit them with damage 3 attacks. That is true, that is fair and valid, but let's think of it this way. Hearthguard are smaller. Their diameter of base size is 32 millimeters compared to 40 millimeters, and they cost cheaper. Sure, they may have not a whole lot of options with their weapons, but all of them can have Edekarn plasma guns, which are all strength 7 AP 3 damage 2 weapons. Because they can reroll hit rolls against the closest eligible target, if you deep strike them in, they're going to be within rapid fire range of whatever you're shooting at, which means that they're the closest eligible target, which means you can reroll the hit roll. That's overall really, really solid. So they can gun down whatever it is that they just popped down next to, and no, that's my sub bullet point for this point. Next point is, or part of this little sub point is, Hearthguard, unlike Terminators, don't need a character to be effective and at what they do. You can take a call, attach them to the Hearthguard, that gives them all lethal hits. That's great. Or you can attach an Einherjar champion, add 1 to the advance and charge rolls that the unit makes, make them a bit more threatening and more reliable on making charges into melee. But they don't need that. And that's I think the key difference between the Hearthguard and Terminators, and why the Hearthguard have more of an edge than their Astartes cousins, is they don't need a character to be as effective as you possibly can have them. They can be effective without that and be a threat in shooting and be a threat in melee, because their melee profile is not too dissimilar to that of both the standard Terminators and Chaos Terminators with power fists or cursed weapons or power weapons. Now, with Terminators from Space Marines, I've given them a try in Gladius Task Force when learning Ultramarines. This was way back when I started, when I was getting into playing 40k on Tabletop Simulator. I've repeatedly tried to keep using them, but I found them to be lackluster in comparison to other options that you have for deep striking as a Space Marine player, whether that be Assault Intercessors doing what I'd want them to be doing or be used as, but for far cheaper and far more mobile, or Inceptors, which are the 3-man to 6-man Gravis units. I found that both options were like, hey, if I wanted to double down and having a deep strike melee option, assault intercessors are the play, or if I wanted to deep strike something in that could really light something up with guns, inceptors were the play there. And I I always found that it was just kind of like why pay the 170 plus points for Terminators plus character when I could pay the 90 to 110 I think for Inceptors to get just as much if not more value from those units. In Chaos Space Marines, I've also tried using Chaos Terminators and Creations of Bile. Um, Similar to Terminators and Space Marines, I found them to be lackluster, but unlike Space Marines proper, I also did find that other units that have the ability to deep strike are also in their own way lackluster, except for Vashtor the Archifane. Vashtor has always been a unit that, hey, when I've deep struck him in and used him as a expensive beat stick and sometimes action monkey or vehicle hunter, he has done exceptionally well. I have experimented with 2 units of Obliterators as my deep strike unit in that comparison, and they performed far better for what I'd want Chaos Terminators to be capable of at least attempting to do. And then lastly, with the Leagues of Votann, the Einherjar Hearthguard, I've had great success with them using the Brandfast Oathband detachment. Um, since then, I've changed to using the Needguard Oathband. Haven't gotten a game under my belt with that detachment, but I'd imagine since my army list has not really changed, the Hearthguard probably performed just as well as I did previously. And then back in their index, before the Leagues of Votann Codex came out, I did play them at least one time to give them a try, get a feel for them, and the Einherjar Hearthguard definitely were pretty solid back then. I know back then their stats were a little bit different compared to what they are in the Codex, but ultimately my opinions of them were, hey, these guys are just Terminators and they do their job a bit better than Terminators. But with that, guys, I want to thank you all for watching and listening. Feel free to like the video and subscribe if you liked it. If you didn't, it's perfectly fine. But what kind of experiences have you had using these units? Have you had great success using Terminators or of any kind? And I'll open the board to talking about non-Space Marine and Chaos Space Marine Terminators. Do you think that there's something that I missed with making or talking about this? Granted, these are all my thoughts and my observations. I could have completely missed something. So feel free to enlighten me in case I missed something. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more content like this in the future below. And hope you guys are having a great time wherever you may find yourself, whether you're at work, at school, or you're on your way home from either. Hope you're having a good time. If not, and things have been going poorly, well, I hope they can turn around and get better. But until the next time, guys, I'll see you next time. Peace.